The Zelenskys are taking a time out from the war in Ukraine to pose for Vogue. These pictures dropped. People have been talking about them all morning. And additionally, we also have a video that they released of the photo shoot so we can see the behind the scenes action.
Oh, really setting the mood.
Interesting juxtaposition there. So, people's objections here, I think, are pretty obvious that in the midst of everything that's going on in Ukraine, this feels performative, inappropriate. The contrast is too high, especially given that Zelenskyy has really tried to frame himself as the guy who's in the thick of it, in the grist of the war, so busy he can't even change out of this olive green t-shirt he's become known for. And now it is quite literally a Vogue prop.
It feels a little propagandistic, to be honest. And again, just to be clear, the Russian invasion is terrible. It is on Russia's fault. They should not do this. Vladimir Putin, don't like him, shouldn't be in charge of Russia. Don't think we can do anything about it, but if we could wave a magic wand, that's what I would ask the magic wand genie to do. But Zelenskyy is suspending political parties, political figures who've clashed with him, centralizing the press. He is governing now as an autocrat. So what are we trying to preserve here? We're trying to preserve liberal norms or the Western way of government and society, but they're throwing it all out the window right now. So legitimate opposition that maybe doesn't like what the current course of action is that's going to result in the ruin of every city in the country. Yeah,
I think that's a good point. And I think that we should also not miss the fact that this is a political project. As kind of cringe as the photo shoot is, I think the copy of the accompanying article is almost worse. You have this section of the article that is really trying to do this kind of, I'm sorry, identity politics, I am women, hear me roar, this is a women's issue, won't somebody think of the children? There's a passage where they talk about Zelenskyy's wife and Jill Biden meeting in Congress, saying she was speaking as a mother and a daughter, not just a first lady. Quote, she showed us pictures of Ukrainian children who had been killed by Russian rockets, including a 4-year-old with Down syndrome, before amping it up. Quote, I'm asking for something I would never want to ask for. I am asking for weapons. Weapons that would not be used to wage a war on somebody else's land, but to protect one's home and the right to wake up alive in one's home. I'm sorry. To use this image of a slain child with Down syndrome in order to renew a call for weaponry from the American government seems to be craven beyond belief. It's the Simpson meme of won't somebody think of the children taken to a really craven level, and now literally dressed up in the context of a fashion shoot. This is a political ploy to get the average American who feels very deeply about this obviously horrific imagery that she's presented to us, to endorse a conflict that they know very little about, and which I would argue we have very little role to play in.
Right. What are more weapons going to do? Are more weapons going to be the end of this conflict?
Absolutely
does more
not.
weapons mean Russia withdraws, Ukraine now exercises control over the Donbas, which they didn't even exercise control over to begin with? Is that what's going to happen? We have to be realistic. That's not going to happen. Or that's not going to happen anytime in the immediate future. Meanwhile, this effort is immiserating us domestically, and it's not protecting anyone's life. Look, I don't want the Ukraine invaded by Russia, but clearly it is only going to come to an end with some kind of diplomatic resolution, some kind of agreement whereby part of Ukraine is now independent or Russia aligned or whatever it is. That's the only way forward. That's the only way out of this. Yeah. Because we don't want World War III. We're not going to send ground troops.
We don't win a war with another nuclear power without it being so much worse than it already is.
Right. We can't. They are a nuclear power. We're waging this indirect proxy war with them, and they started it. They chose it. Russia did, but that doesn't mean we have to continue it or we have to go. Well, we're just committed to doing it. And the Biden administration has no plan to fix it.
Right.
None.
And of course, Russia invaded, but America has been meddling in the region for quite some time.
We've talked on the show about all the
responsibility for those kinds of things as well. And this seems like more of that. I think what is really striking me now that I think about it, about this particular passage, is this tacit argument that more weapons are going to result in fewer of these kinds of children slain, when the opposite is likely true. When you're prolonging a conflict that is an unwinnable conflict, you're going to result in a lot more of these kinds of tragedies that are described, and it seems particularly craven to try to pretend otherwise, again, in the context of a photo shoot. Look, I'm not one of these people who's really absolutist on this as well. I do think that there are different kinds of figures who have different kind of political contexts, who are perfectly fine to go and pose in a magazine if you're going to use it to really bring attention to some certain kinds of issues. But context matters, and I don't get this t-shirt thing. At a certain point,
the aesthetics
it's just
of
like,
the t-shirt.
it's just so performative that you're at a fashion shoot. There's no pretext of, oh, I didn't have time, or I don't have a deep wardrobe. If you want to be so committed to the cause that you want to always be battle ready with your attire, I'm sorry, being at a Vogue photo shoot with Annie Leibovitz is not selling it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just reading an article from my colleague at Reason, Stephanie Slade, about all the illiberal things Zelenskyy is doing. He punished the opposition Platform for Life, which has about 10% of the seats in Ukraine's parliament. He disbanded them entirely. He is centralizing at least one outlet with ties to a Zelenskyy rival has been excluded from broadcasting on the new national channel. That's something Zelensky's defended rather. All of this stuff is going on, and it just undermines the very principles we're supposedly fighting for.
Yeah.
If it's hard, as soon as it gets kind of hard to tell the good guys from the bad guys, or the morally gray guys, bad guys, morally gray guys, because there are arguments the Russian people will make for why whatever went on with the change in Ukrainian government back in 2014, I believe, makes what they're doing justified, or more, and maybe it's a little bit justified, or obviously starting a war is not justified, but they have grievances. Ukraine has grievances. We have grievances. Everyone else in Europe has grievances. But okay, we're just going to defend, the people who are on the side of the West and democratic principles and a free and open society. Well, is that what they're doing? That's not what they're doing now.
And it's never been about that. It's never been about that, which is why, people constantly are very frustrated with folks who evoke women and children, even when women and children are rightly at stake, because of the way it has been historically routinely weaponized to justify militarism. Yeah. And now we're seeing it from the Vice Lady, the First Lady herself.
All right, we'll have more Rising right after this.